Well, hello, 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 hello. Good evening to all of you. It's another Wednesday evening, and I'm sure you are just as delighted as I am to being here with you for another episode of Advancing the Cause. Now, tonight we've got quite a lot to talk about, but I want you to take a minute, just a minute, or maybe less than a minute, to call up a friend, tell your friend Advancing the Cause is on. And tonight we are going to be talking about this installed government. And our topic for tonight is saying, if you can't handle or manage little, how would you be able to manage much? If you can't manage little, how would you be able to manage much? And we've seen all that is happening. But look, take a minute, call up your friend, call up your neighbor, call up your aunt, your uncle, call up everybody. Just let them know advancing the cause is on. And you just share the link with them. Just share the link with them and let them know advancing the cause is on. And while you're at that, we are going to tell you a little bit about what happened between last week to now. You know, we've had so many persons celebrating their birthdays. Yesterday, day before yesterday, the day before. So many persons have done that. And we are just going to ask you to join with me to say happy birthday to those persons. Just join with me and let's say happy birthday to those persons. We want to pray that God will grant them strength, grant them that sense of discernment, so they are going to be able to speak out against all the injustices that is being meted out to our people. And you know what? While we're at that, we are going to ask them to use their voices so that we can speak out against all the injustices that are being meted out against our people. Let's ask God to do that for all of us. Let's ask God to give us that boldness so that we'll be able to speak without fear or favor. So happy birthday to all of those persons who would have celebrated their birthday. We've seen 100 years old as 100 years old just today, I think it is today. Yes, Miss Harris in East Drumvelt, and we've seen a 90-year-old. We've seen 70-year-old. Look, happy birthday to all of these persons. If you're a Christian, then the Bible speaks to three scores and 10, and by virtue of strength then you can go on further. And so those persons who have met that three score and 10, we want to say God bless you. But more of this, more of advancing the cause. And let me share with you, just a couple of days ago we celebrated our in Republic anniversary. Just a couple of days ago, we celebrated our Republic anniversary. But before I go into that, let me bring our guest right in. He's no guest by now. He is co-host to this program. Let me bring him right on, Dr. Mark Devonish. This is he was one of our very prominent doctor. And here it is, brain drain being created in this country. No wonder the Ministry of Health is in the state that it's in, because it's the persons like those in the PPP who ran him out of this country, and now he's giving service in another country. Could you imagine that? And every time we open the newspaper, Mark, thank you for being here with us. Every time you open the newspaper, you're seeing a maternal death, a prenatal something, somebody dying from something, negligence, a whole set of nonsense, a whole set of expired drugs. Then you can't even have a simple thing like a blade at a health center. Man, the works. But again, we are chasing our sound-minded, educated Guyanese citizens. We're chasing them out of our country. So, Mark, on the 23rd, which was Sunday last, we celebrated our Republic anniversary. And so Guyana was there celebrating 55 years as a republic.
Mm-hmm.
Mark, as we reflect on those 55 years, and I'm sure those of you who are joining us here, as we reflect on those 55 years, we would come to acknowledge that it was not a day's work, and it
Exactly.
did
Yeah.
not happen in 5 hours or
Exactly.
55 hours.
Mm-hmm.
It was hard, dedicated, and committed service that was given to this country by LFS Burnham, who ensured that we became not only an independent nation, but we became a republic.
Mm-hmm.
And that in itself should be telling us how this man was a visionary, because he did not only want us to be taken away from the queen, but he wanted us to have total control. And so, Mark,
Exactly.
like you would know, because we've read this and we've heard the PPP repeating this over and over again, while they tried to malign LFS Burnham, you know what? They can't stop his work.
I mean, the greatness of the man is well. First and foremost, for actually going to that, I would like to wish happy birthday to all those who would have celebrated their birthday today or in the week. Happy birthday, and I trust you live long to celebrate many more birthdays. And also, it is important to remember that we have celebrated 102 birthday of LFSB Linden for Samson Burnham. And if you speak with PPP, they would give the impression that this man is so evil. But with but without him, we would not have had independence. We would not have had republic as such. And I mean, there's a great deal of things that we can remember and celebrate about Burnham. For example, for example, when Burnham became the prime minister of this country, as he was when Guyana gained independence, and he became the prime minister of this country. One of the first things he actually did is to recognize the three major religions: Hinduism, Muslim, and Christianity, because Guyana was essentially focused more on Christianity. But because of his work, all the three religions were recognized, and we can have all their holidays. We can have Eid, we can have Diwali, we can have Pagwa. All these things are down to Burnham. The fact that PP would speak of they providing breakfast in school. Burnham was the person who actually originated the whole concept of
Exactly.
feeding. Breakfast in school, he provided school uniform, school exercise books, and school textbooks, and most importantly, he was the one who masterminded education free from from nursery to university, and all that is down to Linden for Samson Model. So when we speak of Burnham, we have to speak at him from a holistic point of view, and not just take isolated snippets from him and try to give the impression that he was an evil man. Burnham is probably the most influential leader that we've had, and it's evident in the fact that after he has died since 1985, people continue to talk about him. They can't stop talking about him because of the fact of the great things that he's done. And
Mm-hmm.
he was very intellectual. He was very articulate. He was highly intelligent. He was a Guyana scholar. He went to Queens. He was an absolutely brilliant man, and I have no apologies to actually state that I see Burnham as a hero. For me, he is my hero, and I would always hold him up high as a hero. And I wouldn't allow myself to be miseducated by PPP, because growing up as a kid, you hear all these stories about Burnham, and it came from PPP and the propaganda propaganda machinery that would
Mm-hmm.
try to give the impression that Burnham is evil, he hasn't done anything good. Burnham, for example, was the one who inculcated in us the whole concept of being patriotic. As we were talking this afternoon, Coretta, when we went to school, the word these songs, these patriotic songs that we sang. Oh beautiful Guyana, my lovely native land.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
From Pakarima, peak of
Power. Mm-hmm.
power, to
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
quarantine, lost land, our children pledge faithful hour to
Yep.
God Guyana's land,
Hmm.
and all these songs that we sang, it it instilled in us a kind of patriotic spirit, and it was all down to Linden for Samson Burnham. So when we speak of
Yep.
Burnham, we need
Hmm.
to focus on all the good things he did. He introduced the national service. He introduced
Yep.
the people's
Militia.
militia.
Hmm.
He introduced
Hmm.
textile mill and
Yes.
all the stuff that Burnham actually did, but people wouldn't talk about that. They would give the impression that he was a corrupt man, but he definitely wasn't corrupt. He definitely wasn't corrupt when compared to people and the corruption. So Burnham for me is my hero, and I will always hold him as a hero. And years from now, I'll continue to hold Linden Firth Sampson Burnham as a hero. And I would, I would strongly re- re- recommend to youngsters, don't believe what you hear from people. Do your own research on Linden First Samson Burnham. When you do that research, you get to realize that he was an absolutely great man, a very influential man, very, very influential man.
Well, Mark, we can continue to talk so much about Eliphas Burnham. As a matter of fact, if you were to read some of his speeches, then
Mm-hmm.
you would get the impression that this man is right here beside you. More than that, when you look at what Burnham would have done in terms of transforming this country, Burnham created for housewives who were not legally married. He
Mm-hmm.
created the scope for them for them to have entitlement,
And for the children also, because
and
they
and
had
for the
the
children.
bastard law,
you,
where
you, you
once
know
you were born out of wedlock, it used to be considered a criminal offense. He he took steps to make sure that that was removed from the law books.
Burnham ensured that our indigenous brothers and sisters were recognized when he named so many places
To
after
Mary,
them, including the Timeri International Airport, which the PPP, they have gone to the extent to demoralize our indigenous brothers and sisters when they took that word off to rename the airport Chedi Jagan International Airport. Could you imagine that? And these are the people who want to tell you that the PNC this and the PNC that and Burnham this and Burnham that. But you
hmm
know what? History, you can't run away from history. It is written there that it was Burnham who had in this country, who created here the glass factory. You remember we had the assembling factory where you assembled the tapir? And
Tapir's machine, yeah, the
our young
car.
people don't know about that,
hmm
but it was Burnham who did that. It was Burnham who caused us to be able to make our own local fruits with the five finger. Hmm?
Exactly, exactly.
And all
He
the
was
rice flour that they talk about. If you go travel around the Caribbean and further afields, rice flour is a big thing now. And if we had
exactly.
continued with that, you could imagine where we would have been now.
hmm Exactly. Because we normally speak of food security now, but Burnham was the one
Yep.
who actually came about with this whole concept. He didn't actually characterize it as food security, but he came about with this concept of feeding yourself, providing for yourself.
Grow
Once
more
you feed
food.
and provide for yourself and not dependent
Hmm.
on overseas foods,
Yep.
then independence is not so much about physical independence, it's about economic independence also. It's about financial independence, and that's what he tried to drill in us. We must have not just the physical independence that we celebrate on the 26th of May, or the republic that we celebrate on the 23rd of March. You must have physical independence, you must have financial independence, you must have psychological independence, where we're not dependent on on other countries to provide for us. And all these stuff that Bonner was trying to inculcate within us, but people wouldn't speak of those things. They would
They
say
would
that he
never.
rigged elections, but I have
Yep.
no evidence that he rigged elections. The
Hmm.
only
Hmm.
illegal election that we've ever had in our country is the 1997 election with Claude Singh Vitier. That was the only illegal election that we ever had in this country. Any other election was legal. It was completely, well, the 2020 election with all the skullduggery that we saw We know for a fact it wasn't legal. So apart from the 1997 election and the 2020 election, those are the only two elections that we have had. And it so happened that PPP are always the beneficiaries when it actually comes to these illegal elections.
But Mark, while we would want to talk some more about LFS Burnham, we've got a couple of other things to talk about. Into this whole activity, I remember back then, coming up to MASH, we used there were lots, and there were a series of activities leading up to MASH Day. And so you had the tours, you had symposiums here and symposiums there, you had choir singing all these national songs, and you saw so many things happening. And
Mm-hmm.
then, of course, all of that led to flag raising, what we call flag raising night. But could
Mm-hmm.
you imagine the installers,
Mm-hmm.
the sick and crude, heartless, and no integrity PPP, decided this year that they weren't going to invite the opposition to the part to the flag raising ceremony? Could you imagine that?
It's absolutely unforgivable, and no apology could actually make up for the fact for what they did. But when you look at it in totality, it's not just this year the opposition was actually invited. For the past 4 years, we were actually sent invitation an hour before, the afternoon before, or sometimes they weren't invited completely. So
Yep.
this apology that they're giving the impression that for the past 4 years the opposition were actually given adequate time and invitation to actually get to the ceremonies is a useless apology, and it's just Charles. I think Charles Johnson is the mastermind behind it,
He
because he's
Go ahead, sorry.
yeah, Charles Johnson is a mastermind behind it, because he's a very arrogant. He thinks that he was created to be president of Guyana, and the fact that he isn't president, he would attempt to destroy anyone who's ahead of him. And so I think it's just him being vindictive that he did not invite the opposition team and the MPs, and it's written all over. Charles Ramsden is completely responsible, but that apology that they give, anyone that reading that apology and is aware of Guyana and aware of how things have been happening in Guyana would know for a fact that that's an apology that you cannot accept. That's an apology, and it isn't so much an apology. Is what steps you're going to take to make sure that there isn't a reoccurrence. So far, we haven't heard anything as to what steps you're going to take to make sure. First, before you could actually recommend steps, you have to do an investigation, because the major issue is the opposition that wasn't invited. You have to run an investigation to identify where things went wrong. And once you know where things went wrong, now you can take steps to make sure that there isn't a reoccurrence. But so far, they just issue an apology, a paper apology, and they haven't done anything else. There's no evidence that they plan on doing an investigation. There's no evidence that they plan on taking steps to make sure that there isn't a reoccurrence. And I can tell you this: 2026 they will be in opposition anyway. 2026 they will find that they're going to be invited, because when APNU was in power from 2015 to 2020, every year they were invited.
Yep.
Every year they were given adequate notice to actually attend. And it's just sad and unfortunate that on the and what makes it more unfortunate also is the fact that our republic was fashioned by Burnham, and Burnham is from PNC. So the party of the man who actually fashioned our republic, mastermind our republic, he was the brains behind our republic, basically. The party of that man, you're gonna disrespect them and don't invite them. That's unforgivable, and I wouldn't accept any apology from PPP or Charles Ramson, because the apology doesn't actually mean anything.
But Mark, if we were to reflect on some actions of the PPP, they seem to be they're the persons who wrote the song that Shaggy sing, or that
It
Shaggy
wasn't
sang
me.
there. It wasn't me, because with everything that happens, there's a
Mhm.
denial. It's not me. The blame game. It's not me. It's them. It's not me. It's her. And so we see here, Charles. And for those of you who don't know,
Mhm.
Charles is just like Jagdio. He micromanages every single thing within the Ministry of Youth, Sports, and Culture.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody is renting the National Cultural Center, it has to pass through Charles. If you want to use the dance school, it got to pass through Charles. If you want to use the theater guild, it got to pass through Charles. Every single thing got to pass by Charles. And so
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand how Charles is going to say at this point that it was the director of culture who was responsible for that. I don't want to hear about the director of culture. You are ultimately responsible. Are you saying to us that you don't have an invitation list? Is that what you're saying? That this is the first time that you're having a flag raising ceremony, so you don't have an invitation list? You had to be scrambling here and there. That would have caused you to miss a whole grouping of people. Come on, Charles, say something better.
He think
But
we're fools.
but the fact that he came out with that, I don't know why you expect people to believe him. That's one. Two, what have you done since you recognize that the invitations were not sent? What have you done?
Nothing.
More, more than that, what if the president had any dignity in him? The president would have offered the apology, not Charles Romson, the president. But you
Mm-hmm.
notice Charles was absent from flag raising, and he was
Mm-hmm.
absent from Mash Day. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe they pulled him in for fitness. Maybe Jagdio pulled him in for fitness.
And it's not the first time he'll be pulled in for fitness because the director for Borough School of Arts, who he actually
Yes,
his friend racially abused, and suddenly Charles got amnesia. Can't remember who is this friend that called him, who's this friend that has his phone number, and ERC now are unable to identify the person. So it's not the first time we be pulling for fitness. But Charles has aspirations of being a president of Guyana. But I tell you this, if Charles becomes president of Guyana, we'll be living in a dictatorship because that's the mindset he has. And the evidence is what we're seeing with the ministry he runs presently. He's going to be a dictator. But that apology, I wouldn't accept that apology under no circumstances. That apology should come with steps that are, with plans for an investigation to investigate what actually went wrong. And that apology should also come with steps saying, well, we identify A, B, C, D, and E as the problem areas, and we will do F, G, H, blah, 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 to make sure that it doesn't actually reoccur. But you're not hearing anything about that at all. Absolutely nothing about it. You just hear some simple apology and expect people to accept the apology and just run with it.
no, these people just think that Guyana belongs to them and they can do whatever they want to do. That's how they feel. And so even when we have cricket here, the opposition is not invited. No tickets are sent to us.
Mm-hmm.
When I remember the Prime Minister of India was here, Modi was here,
Mm-hmm.
and there was no forum for the opposition to engage Modi, none whatsoever, except for when he came to Parliament, and there were a few exchanges between the leader of the opposition and Prime Minister Modi. None whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
We have all these um, all these heads of states coming here, and there is no forum. And so at this time, I want to use the opportunity to call on Prime Minister Mia Mortley, who is
Mm-hmm.
again chairman of CARICOM, to fix it right.
Mm-hmm.
Fix it right. Don't jump all over the place and you're gone to Africa and you want to tell them there what they must do and what is right and what is wrong. In your own backyard, you fix it right.
Exactly.
Fix it right in your own backyard. Don't go to other people's backyard and present yourself like some Holy Mary or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
But it just go to show the mindset of these people. You want to tell me that Mia Mortley are hearing all the things that are happening in Guyana? You want to tell me that she's not reading? You want to tell me no burden whispering to her? But no, she and all the others, they get caught up with the catfish curry. All of them get caught up with the catfish curry and ducking into the interior and so on to look for
Mm-hmm.
more land and to see how they
Mm-hmm.
can establish business there. So
Mm-hmm.
they're not interested in what is happening with the
Mm-hmm.
Guyanese people. Mia Mortley want to tell me that she did not hear this government deporting a whole host of Haitians. She wants to tell me that. Mia
Mm-hmm.
Mortley wants us to believe that she know that a whole lot of Venezuelans flood in this country. And since we're talking
Brazilians.
about about the Venezuelans.
And the
Just the other day,
Venezuelans.
just the
Mm-hmm.
other day, our servicemen were shot at, quote unquote, allegedly shot at by some Venezuelan group, sindicatos, wherever they call them. Our servicemen were shot at. They were injured, not only shot at, they were injured. And this government, just the same way the helicopter, well, I don't know if it crashed, I don't know if it's Venezuelans shoot it down. We can't know up to know what transpired there, but we lost 5 servicemen. Thank God those youngsters in that boat, none of them died. But then look at the response, look at the response action. Look how long it took for them to get those men out of there. I mean, last year was $1.146 trillion budget. This year is $1.3 trillion budget. And what we getting? Are we getting worth for money? What is happening with all the monies that has been approved for the Guyana Defense Force? You mean we can't buy proper boats to have our servicemen use? Ah, it's
The,
sad.
the, the fact is that they've allocated $50.4 billion for the army this year. But in terms of what that 50.4 billion will actually do, if it will help in the defense of the country. But I just want to talk a bit about these these soldiers who were shot at. PP is making an argument that it's a criminal gang. But my argument is, if it's a criminal gang, why are they holding the Venezuelan state responsible? Why are they actually holding them responsible? Because if, for example, Guyanese go into Venezuela, some random Guyanese go into Venezuela and shoot some other person, you can't really hold a state responsible unless you have evidence to show that the state instructed that person to commit that particular act. But then they are so confused. Even though they're arguing it is a criminal gang, they're still trying to hold the Venezuelans responsible. They still completely trying to hold those Venezuelans responsible. And when those army men, very, very brave men, were shot, it took them at least 24 to 48 hours to medevac
Mm-hmm,
them out from the
mm-hmm.
interior. You would want to believe that they'll
Yep.
have something called some emergency response. If a few criminal-minded people cause us chaos in our army, what will happen if Venezuela decide to invade? If Venezuela decide to invade, we would be
Heaven help
completely
us.
defenseless. And that's because PPP don't want to invest in the army because they don't see the army as their people. They see the army as PNC or APNU AFC people because the fact that the majority person in the army are black. So they'll have
Yep.
that fear in terms of investing
Mm-hmm.
in the army and make sure that we have a strong army that can actually defend us. It's just sad and unfortunate.
Very,
The
very
other is,
unfortunate. 7 of our servicemen, 7 of them,
mhm.
7 of our servicemen. And I'm trying to figure out what's going through the minds of those youngsters. What is going through their minds? Because I would have been traumatized, and I'm
Yeah.
sure they are. Just the same way we're not hearing anything about the two survivors from the
Mhm.
helicopter crash. Nothing. We're not hearing anything about them. Maybe they vanish. And
Mhm.
I keep asking all the time. I wonder what is going through the minds of those family members. What is going
Mhm.
through their minds? A helicopter crash. We've lost our husbands, our fathers, our brothers, our uncles, and we can't hear anything. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe some of them don't care. I
Maybe it's a
don't know.
state secret. I mean, the whole helicopter crash. I'm still trying to get my head around it. It happened since last year, December, if I remember correctly. Last year, December, it happened. And on to a day like
No, not
now, or
last year. It was the year before.
the
Last year
year
was one
before,
year.
1 year, over a year ago, it happened. And they said they've done some sort of investigation and we'll get the report. but we haven't gotten a report so far. All that we've been told is that the helicopter was on border operation to drop food and clothes and stuff for the soldiers on the border. But why
Mm-hmm.
do you need such high-ranking officers? Such high-ranking officers in a helicopter to do that kind of job? It all sounds a bit fishy. It all
Very
sounds a bit
fishy.
fishy, and I would hedge my bets. I would hedge my bets in stating that the Venezuelans shot the helicopter down because they were encroaching on the Venezuelan space, and that's why the investigation we can't
Can't.
get the report, because the
Yep.
investigation will completely reveal what they were up to, what they're up to. I mean, I'm not really an army person, but I can't get my head around this whole concept of border operation as they describe it as, and they were going to supplies, carry supplies to soldiers on the border when this unfortunate crash occurred. It's very sad. It's very unfortunate, but I can tell
Very.
you this:
Mhm.
it's gonna go down in history like another can't get my words out. Another
Don't worry.
Monica Reese that went
Oh yes.
unsolved for all those years. It's gonna end up going out just like that. We just know that actually transpired, but in terms of what actually happened, you wouldn't actually never ever know the facts behind it. It's very sad. And you have a lieutenant colonel, a lieutenant, a brigadier, a
Mm-hmm.
lieutenant
Yep.
colonel carrying
Mm-hmm.
food for army men. And that's what they want us to believe. They were carrying food for army men. Give
I
me a
mean,
break.
it's just sad. But you know what? The thing is, if you look at if you trace the operations of the PPP, every time they're caught with their pants down is when they pull in their shells.
Mm-hmm.
Every time they're caught. And so in this particular incident, they've been caught with their pants down. So they're not, you're not even hearing anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
You're not even hearing anything. And the prime minister is a retired
Installed.
brigadier.
Uh-huh.
And one would think that out of the goodness of his heart,
You would have
he
some
would
sort of
want to
allegiance.
reach out there to,
Mm-hmm.
to have this matter resolved and have a report published so that this nation can rest with ease. But no, Mark got to swallow up whatever they tell him.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever they say to him, Mark has to swallow up. And I mean, Mark, he's nothing like you.
Mm-hmm.
Everything to him is yes, that is true.
He's
Okay.
a yes man. He's a token.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
and and
Yeah.
I can actually say it to I can say because I can join um David Hines. He's a leg B. Leg bottom. He's a leg bottom. So they could they
but
could they could come for me if they want, but
but
he's
it's
not. He's
disgust it's
powerless.
disgusting. It's very
He's
disgusting.
completely
But Mark,
powerless.
as we go on, we are hearing
Mm,
about all these development. But every time you hear about the development, there is a backlash, as if it's the eruption of a volcano, where all of these developments they erupt to zero.
mhm.
We saw the cash grant, and I'm sure our operator will put up some of the videos there. The cash grant. Somebody wake up one morning and they decide that they're giving $200,000 instantaneously.
To
So
house.
we had a big announcement, and
Mhm.
then they instantaneously turn into 5 months. And
Mhm.
after some good licking from the opposition with regards to give us the definition of a household. If
Mhm.
you have a landlord living upstairs and a tenant living downstairs, how do you define that?
Mhm.
And so when they had to back off, and then they came with $100,000 for Guyanese 18 years and over. Now, this is what we're having here. I don't know. I'm not sure that we're hearing this sound, but this is what we're having here, distribution of the cash grant. They wanted it to be a big political stunt, but it
Mm-hmm.
ended up being an embarrassment to them, because here we have persons there lining up waiting for the cash grant from 5 o'clock in the morning, from 8 o'clock, from 4:30 in the mornings, people lining up there, and this is what you have. And the thing is, it's not only going to uplift the check, but in many instances, when you reach to the front, your name is not there, no check is there for you. And then when you would have collected that check, look, the madness of the Bank of Guyana. I've never seen this in my life. They talk about Burnham and wanting lines. Burnham used to have people lining up. What is this?
Mm-hmm. It is, if ever, if ever there was a litmus test to see how desperate people are in Guyana, this cash grant is a litmus test. Because you just seeing people joining long lines in desperation. The people who live from paycheck to paycheck. The people who their paycheck could only take them through half of the month. They have to beg for the other half. And people would go around the place boasting and bragging. The biggest, the fastest growing economy, the richest country per capita. All these language and descriptions you'll actually hear from them, giving the impression that this country is developing rapidly. But this whole cash grant is a litmus test, and the litmus test is revealing that people are living in poverty, people are living in desperation. Not
Yep.
that we needed the cash grant to actually tell us that the World Bank states that 50% of our people are living in desperate poverty, existing on 1,100 Guyana dollar a day, which is 5.5 US
Uh-huh.
dollars a day. That is desperation. That is desperation. So the lines that you're seeing, where people have to join the lines and join these lengthy lines in very hot environment, very congested environment, very sweaty environment. And when you join that line, if you're lucky enough to get that check, you have to join a second line when you go to the bank. This is all embarrassing. This is just humiliation for the people. And to humiliate them further, they're saying that you have to take a photo with the cash grant and the check to humiliate them further. They're just on a campaign of humiliating the poor man basically, and they just don't actually care. They don't actually care. And I would quote Shaggy again, because Jack just said it wasn't he. It wasn't me. It's not my fault. Ashley Singh jump up and said it wasn't me. It's not my
It's the
fault.
staff.
Yeah, they don't ever take responsibility. And the team that we hear from PPP consistently is that it wasn't
It
me.
wasn't. Yes, Mark. You remember when they just started, and then they had the teachers lining up at the Ministry of Education's office at 21 Brick Dam, and the push and the tug and all kinds of things. And when the media went out there, they moved them from Ministry of Education and they took them over to St. Stanislaus. And teachers were there in the rain and in sun with their umbrellas up just to get that $100,000. Teachers traveled from Timeri, teachers traveled from Mahaika, teachers traveled from Region 3, and the teachers in Georgetown all reached out there to collect this $100,000. Now this isn't this saying to this government that our people are in dire need? Huh? Isn't this saying to our people, to this installed government, that our people, they're bad and that things tight? It is saying that to
Mhm.
them? Huh? Now, if that wasn't saying anything to them, look at what they did when they took the people down there to when they made that fake announcement
To
about malls
Mohammed.
are going to be shared at the Mohammed's residence. When people turned up there from since 4 o'clock in the morning, huh? Senior citizens, persons who are disabled in wheelchair, pregnant women, everybody turned up at Mohammed's place there. Isn't that saying something to us? Look, this is Republic Bank, where hundreds of Guyanese flocked there to cash those checks. Isn't this saying something? And then they're talking about progress. Where is the progress when people got to line up like this? Just
What
today,
progress?
I think it's today I saw a woman collapsing at one of the sites, at one of the distribution sites, and this is just another one. This is just another one where an elderly woman collapsed. Look, if the operator could bring that up a little closer for us. The woman collapsed today again. Another woman collapsed. We saw one who took in at NIS when they were in front of the NIS building. I mean, this is how much you love and you care for people. This is what I'm talking about. This is how much because we care. Huh? Priya should come and define this for us. Priya should define this for
we
us.
care less.
Huh?
Because we care less.
Is this the one Guyana that we're talking about? Huh? Where you got senior citizens lining up in lines for hours and falling down? They ain't even got a bench there for them to sit. But you know, I want our viewers to understand. There is no one Guyana. We got but 5 Guyanas, not one. Because I've seen in some other areas where you have tents and you have benches and chairs. But in some other areas like Maka and so on, they ain't got no bench. They ain't got no chair. So people stand up all the time, long lines. And so you want to tell me that we got one Guyana? Are you for real? Irfan Ali, are you for real when you talk about one Guyana? Huh? Priya Manikchan, are you for real when you talk about one Guyana? You Todd, are you for real when you talk about one Guyana? Some of y'all got to be blind and dumb and deaf. And then I'm sure we're going to have Anil coming out to talk more about this one Guyana and this one Guyana. Something is wrong with these people, Mark. Something got to be wrong with these people.
Something definitely wrong.
When that was not enough, Mark, we had the farmers, the rice farmers in Blackbush Polder complaining about flooding and how much they're losing. And when it's not the rice farmers, it's the cattle farmers complaining. Look, if we can listen here at what is happening there.
So it's in the rice price.
The rice price something to do. They're going to talk to me, man. Somebody. They're not talking to why they're going to tell me nothing. And you come out, people every week. Okay.
So you notice these are poor people, ordinary people who are trying to make a living. What rain come flooding them out because the PPP, all they're doing is running here, running there, digging up a drain here, closing a trench there, blocking up a canal. So that's all they're doing, running all over the place, doing a sort of madness and causing ordinary people to suffer. Everything in shambles in this country, Mark. And
everything
so
absolute shambles.
Can't manage little. How would the PPP be able to manage much? How they gonna manage a country? A simple cash grant, they can't get it right. If you remember the COVID cash grant, some people still got the pink slips waiting. Some people still got that and they're waiting. They can't get the cash grant right. The farmers, they can't look after the farmers. And I'm sure your boy Zulfi gonna come with how much black belly sheep and how much giant black chicken. You know, I saw them going, they sent to Melanie 400 giant black chickens. Now, I remember long ago, folks then used to say, them older folks used to say, black chicken is evil. But they're sending black chickens. They're sending black chickens to our folks, 400 black chickens. As if on a regular, a person who's rearing chicken, you're buying 300 and 400 and 200 chickens. When you give 400 giant black chickens to an entire community, how many
everybody gonna get one
person get it? Oh, one.
Everybody gonna get one.
Okay.
And that's the government that said it care. This cash grant, it puzzles me. It could be that I am completely not understanding how the cash grant works, but it puzzles me. If you have the bank account details for teachers, police, doctors, lawyers, and all these professionals and some pensioners. Why don't they just transfer the money into these people bank accounts? And then you would reduce the number of persons that have to form the lines, because only those that will be forming the lines will be those that don't have bank accounts. But obviously, people want it to be a whole political gimmick. They want people
Yep.
to pose there with a photograph, and then they'll have a collage of photos. Happy people, we give them a hundred
Yep.
thousand. They want to have the
Yep.
long lines to
Mm-hmm.
punish the people, to punish the masses, because they don't actually care about the masses. You were talking about Mark, the installed Prime Minister
Minister
Mark. What's his name again?
Phillips,
Mark.
Mark
Mark.
Phillips.
Yeah, Phillips. You were talking about him, and him having some brotherly love for those in the army, and in terms of the crash, Mark Phillips has no influence in PPP. Mark Phillips is just basically a token. He's just simply someone who can follow instructions,
A rubber
and,
stamp.
a rubber stamp, basically. That's what he is. So even if he has an interest in what happened in terms of that helicopter crash, he has no powers whatsoever. You don't see the person. Jack Joe is second vice president, and the first vice president, you don't hear nothing about him. The first vice president supposed to be senior to the second vice president, but the first vice president is just completely silent as as it as it pertains to him. Then, on terms of Mia Motley, it's just very sad because she was very involved. She was very involved in our election. You would want to believe that
Mm-hmm.
should be equally involved in as to what happens after the election, but she just seemed completely oblivious. She just, as you said, she enjoyed her catfish curry, and
Curry catfish.
she doesn't
Mm-hmm.
actually care. She doesn't actually care. So it's just what we're seeing happening in this country is just people very poor at addressing issues. If the cash grant is not working, if the process that they're using for the cash grant is not working, change it, do something different. You can't be doing the same thing repeatedly and expect a different result. Recently, I heard over 350 something thousand people haven't collected their cash grants. So it's just very sad. And to have elderly people having to go and join those lines, the elderly people on the whole, as you get older, you become much more frail. As you get older, the ability of your body to regulate your temperature decreases. So you find that if an old person in a hot environment, they sweat much more, and they overheat much more. So it's easy for you to actually end up with a heat stroke. And it's quite that way what is happening with these elderly folks who see fainting. But does people care? People don't care. Jack, you don't
Nope.
care. Or finally, don't don't care, because as far as they're concerned, the people who are getting difficulty to get the cash grant is happening AFC people. We people are well taken care of. We people have chairs to sit down.
Yep.
We people
Mm-hmm.
have places to go and shelter. And the speak of one Ghana, where you treating as cohort of people who are doing, and then on the other hand, you treating people that you think is aligned with your political party a totally different way. It's just sad and unfortunate, but I strongly believe that this cash grant was actually a litmus test of the poverty in Guyana.
Well, if you're going to talk about poverty in Guyana, and you're going to talk about any report coming from anywhere, the PPP will jump at your throats and they will tell you that that is not true. But before we get to the report that speaks to poverty, and that speaks to corruption, and the one that speaks to domestic violence, and where we are on that, I want to bring us, let's go back a little to Charles Ramson. Just a couple of days ago, instruction was sent to the NDC in Region 3, I think it was at Potentia or Wales, where they locked the community center some youngsters were playing football there, and they went out and they probably sought donations from Azruddin Mohammed, and they locked them out of the community center. So when you hear about Charles again, I mean, we have to say these things. Look at what is happening there. Our young people, the future of our country. These young people, if the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture, if they were providing, the people wouldn't have to go and ask other persons to give to them. But look at what is happening here. They've locked them out of the community center. So they can't go in to play, to do their practice sessions. They can't go to receive the gifts that were, look, you see, the gate well locked up. Well locked up the gate. Lock them out of it. I mean, what more can we say? And then you want to offer an apology to the opposition for not sending out the invitations when this here was a willful act, and that one there we know too is another willful act. And so I want our viewers to understand wickedness from this installed group of people, and the only way to get rid of the wickedness is by voting these people out. We got to shut them out.
I mean, I always would compare PPP with Mr. Granger. And I would ask myself, would Granger do that? Definitely wouldn't be doing that. He wouldn't lock the gates because the kids get footballs from Azruddin Mohammed and get gates. He wouldn't actually do that. In terms of the cash grant, if the cash grant was going horribly wrong on the Apne AFC, would Granger just sit down and say that it's not me, it's not my people? He wouldn't have done that. The helicopter crash. You would have had a report, a thorough investigation if it was Mr. Granger. And the point I'm trying to establish here is that PPP, the leaders in PPP, the leadership of PPP are so corrupt. The leadership of PPP are so vindictive, and it's easy to see how corrupt and vindictive they are by comparing them with the Apne AFC government that was led by Mr. Granger. If those soldiers, for example, were shot by criminal elements, you could rest assured that Mr. Granger would have ordered some investigation to get to the bottom of it. But PPP just don't care. It just don't care unless the problem isn't in Pradoville. PPP is not too bothered about it.
But Mark, I just want our operator to give us, if we can hear what these parents are saying here. I don't know.
If we play football, we more of skin. What am I asking? More of. We are more all over. We never got no proper boots, nothing. And Mr. Mohammed come for help we out and then block the gate. As you can see, we got no light, nothing in the area.
All these youths here. I reckon right. They lock the gate.
Yes.
Just hear Mr. Mohammed come in to help these youths. And the youths can talk and they make mention this place full of grass. What will happen in this?
We have the youth have games. We have like to take them off the streets. Right? Give them a community center. They could come up play games. They have football, they have cricket, they have young other activities. Right? We need to do stuff. Yeah, we need to try our best, right, to get the center up and running, that the youths could come off the street and come into sports and continue enjoying the sports, right?
No,
so you guys want is going to do.
Yeah. Right. Meanwhile, if we could do a playing area, a proper sport where they could get to utilize the park until they're ready to do the ground.
Currently you don't have no playing area.
No playing area. Because when the ground must say the rainfall and the ground, we better gotta go.
Alright. Yes. I'm here with the youth.
So,
they're from
this here, it's an embarrassment to this country. This is an embarrassment to this country. You are not providing. Somebody else is kind enough to provide for our young people. These are our youths. Rather than having them liming on the streets, wanting to go and smoke, wanting to use vape, wanting to scramble somebody's bag, they have a place there, a community center where they can go and run around on the field. I mean, Charles has been allotted a whole lot of monies from the budget, last year's budget and this year's budget, to do ground enhancement. And here we have our youths talking about the tall grass, what is happening there. And here is that you have somebody, a Guyanese, coming to offer some assistance, and you lock them out. I mean, these are our children. If you can do this to our children, what are you going to do to the adults?
It is very sad because people operate under the construct that if you're my enemy, anybody else have to adapt their enemy. In other words, because Ajuden is their enemy, these poor kids who just want to play football have to see Ajuden as an enemy and don't take the balls from him, don't take the gates from him. And if you don't actually do that, they will actually lock the gates. But it just epitomizes how people think. They strongly believe that Guyana they own. Guyana is their own. They lock the gates because they believe the ground there, they own it. Some parent pass it down to them and they have ownership of it. They have the transport for the ground. They fail to realize that ground there belongs to the people. It's a public ground. And I don't know why they didn't break the locks off and simply go and play football. I guess they were scared. But if I were there, I would have completely broken off the locks and simply go in and play football. And let me see who can charge me for trespassing when I'm on public space, in public space. But it's just people we seeing all the time. The vindictive people.
This is a community ground. This is not Charles Ramson's ground. This is a community ground. The monies that they think is theirs is the people's monies. It's our tax-paying dollars they're spending. But yes, they want to decide how this money must be spent, where it must be spent, on which group. I bet if that was border ground or that was one of the other cricket grounds, you would not have seen that kind of reaction coming from them. Everest or one of those grounds, you would not have seen that happening, but this is what ordinary Guyanese children and their parents have to go through under the PPP, under this elite group. This is what we've got to go through. And when an ordinary man, today I was talking to some folks and they were telling me an ordinary man is caught with a spliff and 3 years he gets. But when one of the one Guyana group if one of them is caught with 4 kilos of cocaine, some money's gonna pass, they gonna hold him for 2 days, and after that, you don't hear anything else about it. And case in point, the niece of Minister Sonia Parag, where is she? We're not hearing anything. But
she got for psychological assessment.
We saw her at the cricket, but she had to go to get assessment, evaluation. She had to go to have an evaluation. Nobody else can get evaluation. Everybody else going and spend it 3 years with some hefty fine on them.
Right, yeah, exactly.
4 years or 2 years. But this particular young lady, because she's the niece of a minister, she had to go to get evaluation. She had to go for evaluation. And so here again, the gap between the rich and the poor, those who have and those who don't have, it will continue to widen.
Exactly.
And we have the issue of crime in this country. And Robson Ben is bold enough to tell people that crime is on the decrease. We got road accidents just over the weekend. 5 persons lost their lives. Just over the weekend, a young woman, 27 years old, was shot 12 times by her husband. Where is Vindy? Where is the Guyana police force? And this brings into play, one, what is the police force doing with regards to motorists using our public roads? When they're supposed to be there, they're not there. When they're not supposed to be there, they're out there harassing the ordinary minibus driver and conductor and the ordinary man who driving his car. They're out there harassing you. The traffic lights are there to flow, They at the traffic light creating more confusion. But when they're supposed to be at strategic points, they're not there. Now, if we were to talk about this young lady who was shot 12 times, Mark, as a medical doctor, talk to us.
Whoever did that, the well, they call it allegations, but the guy actually admits so far that he was the one that shot her husband. He has to be a beast, because if he shoot her once, that would be enough. Shoot her in her legs, that would be enough to incapacitate her. But he shoot her 12 times, and that 12 times to ensure that she's dead. In other words, she would bleed to death. That 12 times to make sure that she's actually dead. But to me, it shows that there's serious problems in Ghana with regards to domestic abuse and grievous and gender-based violence. There's serious problems with regards to that. As a matter of fact, Ghana leads the Caribbean in terms of gender-based violence. And with that fact in mind, you would want to believe that Vindia Prasad would have been introducing policies and initiatives to actually address this scourge, because every day you open the papers, you're seeing some woman being killed by some man, or some woman being beaten by some man, or some woman being threatened by some man. It's always the women who are being the victims. But yet, PP is not doing anything about it. Look, for example, we had this unfortunate case recently with this young schoolgirl, a 12-year-old schoolgirl, Millie Miguel. Millie Miguel went to school and she said that how she's being abused. And before they actually go through the right processes and the right steps to make sure that she's seen by the relevant person, they went through a totally different path altogether completely. And as a result, the child who was being abused committed suicide as a result. The fact is that they're going to have an investigation into that. Well, hopefully they have an investigation into that. But even before an investigation is out, Vindia Prasad already put her hands up and saying, it wasn't me.
Yep.
We don't have enough social workers. But you're responsible for employing social workers. That's your responsibility. You're the minister for that ministry. You're responsible to make sure that they have enough social workers. But of course she put her hands up. And the same thing with a young girl who was shot 12 times. All they did some Facebook posts, and then I saw an article today in Village Voice with some initiative that she's producing called Patrol, to educate the police on how to deal with domestic violence. But it goes much deeper than that. This thing has to start in our schools, have to start with our young boys.
Exactly.
Instilling them that a woman is their equal. A woman is their equal. But then when you're gonna have Jack Dio beating his wife, well, we're gonna say allegedly, because she said that how you used to beat her, but she didn't provide any evidence. We're gonna have Jack Jill locking her out of the bedroom. When you're gonna have that gentleman who was aligned with PPP, I can't remember his name, who slapped that girl and then he flew the country afterwards. He was allowed to fly the country. When you have
Nigel Darren
Lal, who was sexually involved with a child. All these things, society look at these things and they follow the lead of their leaders. Whatever the leaders do, that's what societies do. So we have to first address this scourge within PP, where they have this tendency to molest. But it's very unfortunate with a young girl who was shot. And I just hope her son is getting adequate care, because he's gonna be traumatized also, because he's gonna be without a mother and a father, all down to the fact that his father intentionally decided to kill his mother.
Well, you know, Mark, it goes deeper than that. And yes, I hear you talk about what we're supposed to be having in our schools. Outside of our schools, I remember when I was attending school, we used to have, you call them not welfare officers then, I think it's guidance counselors, something you
Yeah, the
call them
counselors, yeah.
then.
Mm.
But back then, you had them visiting communities, visiting homes, distributing flyers, having little meetings in the community to talk about some of these issues. I mean, you're hearing all sorts of things happening, all sorts of allegations. You were hearing about this young lady who was murdered, about her being unfaithful. But we had these things happening all the time. This is not something new. But we never went to these kinds of extremes. And so here again, Vindy is responsible for that young lady's death.
And the
Robeson Ben
child.
is responsible.
Mm-hmm.
Charles Ramson, to some extent, is responsible. Priya Manichand is responsible. All of them, every single one of them responsible.
Had a hand in it.
I mean, it's happening too often. Robeson Ben is responsible with the police force because they're the ones who issuing the gun license.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're issuing a gun license, nobody
Without
doing any
background check.
background check on these people, but they come and they present documents to you. I have a business here and a business there, and so you issue them with gun license. And then you don't do any follow-up. No evaluation you don't do on these persons or follow-up to find out, well, whether these persons were involved in any incident anywhere and they had cause to brandish their firearm, or if they're walking around the streets and they have it cocked up there so that people can see that they got a firearm. Nobody doing anything. So all of them responsible for this child's death, this young woman's death. All of them, Vindy, and all of them responsible for that little girl, Miguel, who committed suicide. And you know, this here is causing me to remember Nisa Gopal. You remember Nisa Gopal?
Nisa Gopal again from QC, the QC child.
Nisa Gopal, when Nisa was complaining all the time. And the head teacher and the teachers there, they were filtering all the information to the Ministry of Education because they couldn't handle it. And they failed Nisa Gopal. So every time, and so we have to continue to say, if you can't manage little, how are you going to be able to manage much? And so again, the PPP is a failure. They're failing so far. They failed the cash grant. They failed the soldiers. All two groupings of soldiers, they failed them. They failed Miguel. They failed this 27-year-old girl. They have failed a whole set of youths that we saw there in Region 3 that they locked the gate at. They failed the farmers in Blackbush Polder. What happening with health? You can tell us about health now.
Well, health's a complete disaster. But before I actually go into that, I just would like to emphasize the point that even if this girl was unfaithful, that's no justification for him to shoot her, because the evidence is that men are much more unfaithful when it comes to relationship, and we don't find the women up in arms and shooting us. And he had an option. He could have walked away. He could have come from 1 to 1,000. He could have separated. He could have filed for a divorce. All these things he could have done. But he has the mindset where he feels to himself that he owns her. And if he can't get her, nobody will actually get her. But I just hope I just hope that they deal with him in the prison. Seriously hope that they deal with him very severely in the prison.
But outside of that, Mark, this young man is alleging that the young lady there had a knife. But even if she had a knife, you were the man in the house. You could have picked up a bowl and throw it at her. You could have thrown some water at her because you're having a gun and she's having a knife. I have not read anywhere that said he has a scar or a joke or something anywhere. I ain't read anything about that. You could have picked up a chair from the dining table. You could have thrown something to distract her. You had to shoot her 12 times. No, man, that is what he premeditated to do.
Yeah,
He
definitely.
premeditated to do that. I don't care what the circumstance is.
Mhm.
He
Exactly.
could have walked away. What
Mhm.
so that this young lady could have done to him coming out of this argument that they're saying they had an argument? What so she could have tell him? Huh? Even if you had a knife, Mark, you would know with a knife, I
You
gotta
gotta
come
be close,
close to
close.
you to
Yeah.
inflict a wound.
Hmm. And he cannot tell me that how when he had this gun and she had a knife, she come rushing towards him. I don't think she's crazy.
It
But
is sad.
but
It
but
is sad.
but I'm quite sure he's gonna get justice, and it's just like the army captain who shot that girl 14 times. I hope he get deal with in the
But
in the prisons.
but you know, again, this is saying to us that monkey see, monkey do. Some of
Because
these guys, when they have the firearm with them, they feel as if they're bigger than everybody else and they can do. I am sure we don't have the picture here, but I remember Charles Ramson going out to visit somewhere,
mhm,
and he had his gun there exposed so that everybody could see that he got a gun.
well, that's Charles Ramson.
And that's how reckless all of them are. Every single one of them, just the same way, just as reckless.
And I
And
think there was
so,
a story once with Darim Lal pulling a gun on someone.
yes,
Mm,
Dharamlal had the issue with the United Nations employee, a
mm,
foreigner
mm,
who was in this country, and it was alleged that
mm.
the guy was involved with his ex-wife and so on.
Wife.
He pulled, you know,
He pulled a gun on. Yeah.
I
So they
mean,
have a history.
so and then you remember we had what the gunslinger name? He was a minister, and they'd moved him to Venezuela. Was it Nocta?
Sam Nocta. Sham Nocta. I'm not too sure who is that.
Not I can't, I'm trying to remember the name of the minister that they had to send. They'd sent him away to Venezuela as an ambassador, and he pulled
That's,
gun too. Huh?
mhm.
We got Charan Das who abused out in India. We got strip and slap man Barry.
Yes, Barry
Huh?
Ramsam.
You remember?
Yeah, Barry Ramsam. It's just violence to think about all the time because and as time progresses on under this government, you're gonna see how desperate they are. You're gonna find them doing much more desperate things out of frustration. But as you asked me about health just now and the state of health, health is in a total crisis. They've allocated $143.2 billion for health, and health and the evidence of the state of the health was shown when this young doctor from Tamari, who described
Yep.
describe a situation
Mhm.
where they don't have potable water, they have to go and fetch water to flush the toilet. She talked about the health centers being flooded, and the drugs are flooded out as a result. She talked about the not having a receptionist. She talked about a whole long litany of issues in the health centers, and those issues aren't unique to those health centers. Those issues you find it in other health centers, and you also find it in the hospitals. The fact is that PPP is focusing more on infrastructure works. They focus on building. Orphan Ali said he's gonna build 12 new hospitals from now until 2028. But as they build these hospitals, what about the old hospitals you have? Why you just don't repair and develop those old
Mhm.
hospitals that you have?
Nope.
And
Nope.
what why you don't invest in paying the doctors and the nurses more? Because it's actually happening is because the people are being inadequately paid. They're just flying out. Only recently we learned that how 700 nurses were short at GPHC. 700 nurses were short at GPHC. And I'm quite sure that would be replicated in other hospitals also. You'll have thousands of nurses vacancies. And what was the consequence of this? The consequence of this is that our maternal deaths, in other words, women in pregnancy are dying, the rate is increasing. or young babies, young babies newly born are dying as a result. Young prepubertal kids are dying early also, and all these things are happening simply because simply because the health sector is collapsing. If you have, for example, diabetes and hypertension is on the uprising Guyana, simply because the health centers aren't equipped to actually deal with these conditions. So patients are developing complications from these conditions. So the health center is in a complete, the health sector is in a complete chaos, complete chaos. Right now we have two patients sleeping on one bed. On up in the AFC, they were able to address that, where they were having one patient per bed. But now because of inadequate beds and in terms of poor management of the beds that have poor management of patient flow, you have increased patients in the hospitals. And as you just, you have two and three on one bed. Imagine, just think for a second. You go to a hospital and you have to sleep with some random person that you've never met that person before. How can you sleep? And not only that alone, you don't even know what health condition that person has. If he can transfer it to you, if it's a contagious disease, for example, how can you have two people in the same bed? And it is just sad. And they would speak of a world-class health center. They
And
would speak of a work
Before you go further, all of this is happening in the country with the $1.3 trillion budget.
budget. Yes.
The country with the fastest growing economy. Eh? All of that
Hmm.
is happening.
Oh, exactly. And because the 1.3 trillion isn't going towards us, it's going to friends, families, and favorites. And
Hmm.
because of rampant corruption in the health sector, you find that you find that systems aren't in place to actually address patient health needs, because they're focusing on the wrong thing. They focus on infrastructure, and with the infrastructure that they focus on, there's rampant corruption. The, the health sector is definitely in crisis, and PP is aware of it, but they would try to mislead the masses by having these propaganda headlines. But the reality is that the health sector is spiraling downwards.
Well, Mark, every time you think about health under the PPP, you have to think about death, suffering, malnutrition, um, everything, mental health issues, everything. Every time you have to think about the PPP and health. And Frank Anthony should go home. I don't know what Frank Anthony is still doing around there. Frank Anthony should be asked to go home, because every time he's around there, we got all this craziness happening. I remember when Valda Lawrence was Minister of Health under the coalition. She visited hospitals and she saw the two in bed,
Hmm.
two patients on a bed, and she said,
Hmm.
no, this can't be happening. And she put systems in place and it was corrected. As soon as the PPP returned to office, the same nonsense. I remember just a few months ago, we saw rats at the West Demerara Hospital on the bed with the patient.
Hmm.
We've seen the same thing at New Amsterdam Hospital. Now, I mean, these people ain't got no shame. And these are the people who will stand up with their faces as bold as ever to tell you, oh, this, and we're doing that. Now, you got these hospitals. You're not hyping these hospitals, as the young people would say. You're not hyping them. You're not revamping these hospitals, but you're
Hmm.
going out to build more hospitals. It's like prayer with the schools. We got so many schools that needs repair, urgent repair, some of them. But you're going all over the place to construct new schools, and we know why. Once you're constructing new schools, and it is alleged that Priya got some company, and the company enjoying all the construction of schools in the
Hmm.
hinterland.
Yes.
you know, and I remember hearing her talking about we will not rest. We will not rest until every child can pass mathematics and English. I don't know when that's going to happen. I mean, it's good thinking, but if you don't put the systems in place, it cannot happen. Under the coalition, in 3 years, the coalition was able to move our passes, percentage passes in math from 21 or 19, wherever it was, to 46. We were able to move English to 68. By the time the coalition left office, we gone right down.
Right down. And to add to those numbers, in 2020, the budget allocated for education was 50 billion, and the matriculation rate was 48%. That was under the coalition 2020 when they came into power. The matriculation rate, that is kids that were able to move on from high school to university, was 48%. PP has invested nearly 400 billion from 2020 to 2024, and the matriculation rate has dropped to 26%. In other words, at 23%, despite them investing 350 billion more than what the coalition has.
So I'm hoping that our viewers are getting a clear picture of what these people are doing, squandering your money. Squandering your money. That's all they're doing. Squandering your hard-earned monies. And they're telling you, oh, we're doing this, oh, we're doing that. It's like I saw today, Melly Mel saying to Priya, don't show us this fancy food today because the children are writing mock exams. This is what they should be having every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Every single day. Not a stupid cool kid juice and some crazy sandwich. Huh? That's not a breakfast.
Or curry.
Or curry. Huh? And like the child said at from West Romville, a couple scramble pieces of eggs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who are the persons that have these, that went out on these contracts to provide meals for the various schools? Who are these people? Do you have a background to say these people have been providing this kind of service for a year or 2 years or 3 years? Is anybody that picking up any all where? And coming to cook for people's children? No wonder some of the children are getting sick.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm sure many of them have not even gone to see the conditions under which some of these meals are being prepared.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
When they get going, they give the children hot dog. Hot dog is the fastest thing they can do. Hot dog and juice. I mean, that's how our monies are supposed to be spending. And again, people, if the PPP can't handle little, then they can't handle much.
Vote them
if
out.
You can't manage little, you can't manage plenty. It's as simple as that. And they have been failing every single way, everywhere. If we were to touch on labor, I think we got a couple minutes more. But if we were to touch on labor, every 2 mornings you open the newspaper, it's an industrial death. It's an industrial accident. And we got a minister of labor who just flunks in himself all around the place and not doing what he is supposed to do.
He got a young girlfriend.
Man, this whole cabal of people. And see, he flunks up himself with some girlfriend around the place. I don't know who the girl, you know. This man, just all these people need to pack up and go. They have no decency within them, none whatsoever. And they want to tell people how you must live your life. According to Melly, he has a wife and then he got a girlfriend. What example are you showing to the citizens in this country? It's okay to do that.
He's being distracted. He's being distracted from the work that he's supposed to be actually be doing. But in terms of those occupational health injuries and deaths that they've had, you would want to believe after the first one, someone would have said, let me sit down here and try to analyze what went wrong. And in analyzing what went wrong, I may be able to recommend solutions. And then I'll be able to disseminate these solutions or these recommendations to other work sites. So, for example, some man climb up on some pool and he fell down, and the evidence showed that he didn't have the required clothes, like he didn't have the helmets, he didn't have
Helmet,
the
the
necessary
strap,
the
the,
strapped in.
you know.
Then you make sure that after the investigation find that you make sure that you address that and disseminate it widely so that others can learn from that mistake. But it appears that one person died of occupational health injuries and deaths, and they just ignore it, incompetence. Another person died, ignore it, incompetence, and it just keep happening all the time because they're not taking
Yep.
steps to actually address it, which is very sad and unfortunate. But I'm quite sure if you to ask the Minister of Labor whose fault it is, he's going to tell you quite frankly, it wasn't
Not
me.
him. It wasn't me.
It
And
wasn't
that's
me.
the tune. It's like
Mhm.
Jaguar. Jaguar said he didn't know that Critic got a contract
It
because he
wasn't
was
me.
not.
No.
It wasn't him. It was them at
Mhm.
cabinet. He didn't know. The same thing
Mhm.
with Sue. I would hope that he finds Sue
Mhm.
because he
It
up to
wasn't
now
him.
he doesn't. It wasn't him. He doesn't know where to find Sue. But as we wrap up, Mark, I remember the issue of the squatting parliamentarian that we have who is occupying the position
Mhm.
as deputy speaker in
Kissoon.
parliament. I mean, Manzoor Nadir finds every way to prevent the opposition, the proper opposition, the real opposition from doing things that they ought to do. We had the Henry's boys, the motion on the Henry's boys just being
That
put
was turned
aside
down.
again. It was denied again.
Mhm.
But here is Manzoor Nadir encouraging a young lady who's not supposed to be in parliament. He's allowing her to continue to sit in parliament. I mean,
That is very sad. But it's not the first time that PPP is engaging in illegality. You would expect the parliament will uphold the laws because obviously the parliament make laws. The least they can actually do is uphold those laws. There was this Minister of Tourism, Waldron, who was in the parliament illegally.
yes,
Again,
sworn in twice.
exactly. And it just shows how that PP as a party have no respect for laws. This girl Kissoon, if she had an iota of shame in her face, she would have actually resigned by now. But so much things have been said about her and continue to be said about her. But she just completely shameless. Just completely shameless. And the Speaker of the House, he had brought Parliament into disrepute in terms of some of his rulings. The Henry Boy's death. You would want to believe that such a death of public interest, if we can't solve it, if the locals can't solve it, then you get foreign help to solve it. When they had the
They
Maria
don't want
5
that.
example, they had foreign help that came in and helped them. So why in this case you don't want foreign help? To me, it shows that there's
They know.
something that they're hiding. They
Yep.
know the truth behind it, and there's something that they're hiding,
Mhm.
and it's probably political also. The deaths were political.
And Mark, both mothers have died. Both mothers. Grief
Yes,
took both mothers. So
yes.
both of the mothers are dead. Isaiah and Joel's mother, both of them are dead.
Hmm.
I'm not sure what is happening with Harish Singh's grandmother, if she's still
Hmm.
alive, because I know
Hmm.
it put a toll on her as well. And this is what the PPP are about. They just don't care. They just don't care because it's not them, so they don't care. Now we got Claudette Singh who's sitting at GCOM. And if you trace back, you're going to recognize that all the Singhs who sat there, we had problems with them.
Yes,
All them
do
Singhs
not
who sat
sing.
there.
The army man sing. What your name
Joe
again?
Singh.
Joe Sing,
Now
Claudette
Claudette.
Sing. They share problems. But
No,
I think she should resign. There's no question about it because she's supposed to be a neutral party, but all her voting and all her actions are
yep.
there to support PPP. She should just resign. Take shame out and resign.
No, and that is why we will continue to clamor for a clean voters list and biometrics. I remember when Jagdio was the leader of the opposition, Jagdio
Mm-hmm.
was singing the song, clean voters list and biometrics, clean voters list and biometrics. And now Claudette want to tell us that the time is too short. But
She
we
had a
just
whole five
established
years.
the fact. We just established the fact that they got which one of the countries in one of the African countries that had
Ghana.
their elections done in 6 weeks using biometrics,
And they had 15 million people.
and we ain't got a million people yet.
We get 700 something thousand.
Mm.
We don't have nothing close to a million. It
And,
is
and
possible, it can be done,
no,
but you just have to have the political will and the will to have others to come and guide you, international help.
man,
But
these folks are just corrupt. And it's corruption and more corruption and more corruption. That is why every time you go into parliament, this word corruption, it would ignite or raise the demons in the speaker and the
raise
others.
the
That's
bumps.
why they don't want to hear the word corruption. But our people have got to understand that the only way of making Guyana good or great again is by removing the PPP. And for Guyana to grow, the PPP got to go. And we have to say these things and we have to work towards it. Look, the appointment of the chancellor and the chief judge can't be done up to now. Is it because of their gender or is it because of their ethnicity? Which one?
It's both. It's both. The man at the top, Jack Dio, who's the de facto president, he doesn't like women, and he doesn't apparently like people who he feel are politically leaning towards PNC.
Well, I can attest to that, and not only on my own behalf, but if we look around and see what is happening, check the Guyana Police Force. You check the people who are promoted. You check the Guyana Defense Force and see the persons who are being promoted. Many of them in the high bracket
With PPP.
Are the ones who they feel will carry their mandate through, and the ones who will not carry through their mandate, they don't want to promote them because they are scared that these people might topple them. But don't worry, 2025, we are prepared to push the elections a little further into 2026 to ensure that we have a clean voters list and biometrics, because that's the only way that we are going to see or have in this country fair, free, and transparent elections.
Credible elections.
I noticed 2 days ago they dragged again Assistant Commissioner of Police Paul Slow before the magistrate, before the courts. I mean, these people are so desperate that it's everybody they're attacking. Everybody. I see them throw up something about Mohammed's the other day, and then the young lady said she's hitting out on a flight. Now, all kinds of craziness, which is saying to us that they're running scared. But I must remind them that over 90,000 ballots were affected. 90,000 ballots were affected. 61 dead voters we had. We had 4,864 absent voters. We had 150 stuffed ballot boxes. We had 49 ballot boxes without the requisite documents. And we had 1,278 missing oaths of identity. And all of that came out in the recount of the 2020 elections. So the PPP can't tell us anything. They can't tell us anything. And we know the areas. We know the areas. The ballot boxes from Region 1, you remember all the documents were soaked?
Yeah.
All the documents were soaked. Ballot boxes coming from the East Coast and more in those places, we know what transpired there. And this is how the PPP operate. They plan to operate again in 2025. But our eyes are opened wider. And and we will not allow a couple of things to happen. You know, I've seen again in the ministries where you have senior officials, they're transferring you left, right, and center. The Guyana Defense Force, they're pulling them out left, right, and center, and seconding them here and seconding them there and seconding them there. So they're no longer in the structure of the Guyana Defense Force. In the prison service, they've done the same thing in the prison service. In the fire service, they're keeping you on the sideline. I mean, this is crazy. And whether you're part of the military or not, you got to have a say in what is happening in this country. You can't decide that you're standing on the side. You have to have a say, because it is affecting you. It will affect your children. It will affect your family. So all of us have got to come out and say, and you see them church people who sitting down on the sideline. You see them church people who sitting down on the sideline, and they're not calling wrong. You can get beaten with many stripes.
Exactly.
Many stripes. All these church, all these pastors and these pundits and these imams and so on who don't want to speak out. If you speak out, we wouldn't have a young lady being shot 12 times. If you speak out, we're not going to have a community center being locked up from our children can't go in there to play. If you speak out, then this government will not go and bulldoze people's homes. But many of you are not speaking because you want to collect a little plastic bag. You want to collect a little brown paper bag. You want a favor or two. So you're frightened to speak out. But you have a responsibility. Every single one of you have a responsibility. Mark, I think I'm going to take your closing remarks because we can go on for the rest of the night.
Yes, you can go on forever. I think what people need to understand, that PPP is a party. The leadership doesn't take responsibility. The fastest thing that comes from their mouth is, it wasn't me. They had the Maria 5 example.
Yep.
Prayer jump up and say, it wasn't me.
It was the Redo.
Exactly. You're having problems with cash grants. Jagyo said it wasn't me.
Nope.
Ashley Singh is saying it wasn't me. You have massive accidents on the streets where people are every day opening papers. Some one is being killed on the street. Robson Ben said it wasn't he.
Nope.
The people were drunk. It's not he.
It's not he.
And
As a matter of fact, Mark, as we're speaking here, just about 2 hours ago, there was an accident in Berbice. A 19-year-old is dead. 3 others injured.
And they're not doing anything about it. People are not doing anything about it. But they quick to say it wasn't me.
Yep.
The maternal deaths, the neonatal deaths that are having in the hospital, the crisis at the GPHC, Dr. Anthony comes out and said,
wasn't me.
Look at somebody else. It wasn't me. You had the girl who was shot 12 times. You had the little 12-year-old girl who was raped and ultimately committed suicide. When you start saying, we ain't got enough social workers, blame the social workers. So we have a government here who doesn't ever take responsibility. And leadership. There's a mantra that goes, the buck stop with me. And if something goes wrong, if I'm the head of that particular department, the buck stop with me. But it doesn't stop with PPP. They always find someone else to blame. And as a result, they don't deserve a next term. Unless you're happy with the fact that they're saying it wasn't me. But if you're not happy with that fact that they're saying it wasn't me, I think it's time to vote them out. I just think it's reached a time. They've passed the expiration. They'll meet the expiration date in November, and we'll vote them out.
But Mark, before we go, I must mention this one. I think I did mention it the last time. There is this school on the quarantine, Winifred Gaskin Memorial Secondary School at Manchester Village. We're hearing all kinds of talks that the government has sold this school. I want to put them on alert that the people in Liverpool, Lancaster, Manchester, Ulverston, Alness, and even the communities further will not sit and allow this to go. That school, Priyamanik Chan and the others, they don't even know how that school came about. They don't know how that school came about. And so if you want to sell a building, you want to sell an entire compound, you must consult with the people there.
Exactly.
We will not allow this one to go down like that. And so the past students, the teachers who taught there and teachers who are teaching there now, and the community will stand up against you. So y'all better think about what you're doing again. Winifred Gasking Memorial Secondary on the quarantine at Manchester Village. We will allow that school and the history behind that school to continue standing. With that, folks,
Exactly.
we want to thank you so much for being here with us on Advancing the Cause. We'll see you again next week for more, but stay tuned. The PPP has got to go if we want Guyana to grow. Do have a wonderful night. Be careful on the roads, and may God bless you. Thank you,
Same
Mar.
to you. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.